We are here gathered to discuss a very important subject and very critical issue for South Asia, that is water sharing, water management, we call it. This is an area where South Asia has exemplary instances also in terms of water sharing. I recall a couple of organizations that are engaged in water management issues of this region, particularly this South Asia. It is amazing to see that these instances haven't been multiplied, replicated as much as possible. And there must be some problems, and this is one of the sessions that we are going to deliberate on the issues, obstacles, and ways to cooperate. I have 6 distinguished panelist members who will be enlightening us on their experience in their own respective countries and also experience in the South Asia region as a whole. I think the ground rules are very clear. Each of the participants is going to speak for 5 minutes so that we have some time for floor discussion or interactions. The time monitoring will be done by our staff. That was really effective, the ground share. So you know which of the topic you are going to pick up within the water management issues that we will be discussing. I have in my panel Arvind Kumar, Khalida Ghaus, Herath Manthrithilake,
it's a long name.
yeah, Azharul Haq, Uttam Kumar Sinha, and Mahendra Lama.
I think that's the old program, that list that you have been provided. Khalda Ghaus is no more. I'm representing
I
Khalda.
see.
Yeah.
Your good name, sir?
Neddm Ahmed.
Neddm.
Yeah.
Neddm Ahmed.
To start with now, may I request Mr. Arvind Kumar from India.
Good morning. The challenges related to water shortages and water security issues and development security of the region. So this is the main theme. And when we discuss about the water security in that region, especially transboundary, we have to actually consider the insecurity community and the water ticket as a different roles actually. Because if we talk about India, the people of India are faced with critical challenges pertaining to water shortages and the water security issues, which entails the potential of adversely impacting the development of security of South Asian countries. The total water resources available in India has been assessed to be 1869 BCM, out of which 1123 BCM are utilized. This includes 690 BCM from surface water and 433 BCM from groundwater resources. While the total water resources availability in India remains constant, the per capita availability of water has been steadily declining due to the population growth and increasing economic activities, placing India merely just above the water stress condition. Recurring incidents of water and climate-induced disaster like torrential rains, flash floods, landslides, and cloudbursts have put further strain on already scarce water resources of India. Besides, water security in India is under threat from many sources: population growth, urbanization, increasing water pollution, the overall abstraction of groundwater, water-related disasters, and climate change. Currently, planning and management have proven insufficient to address the challenges for meeting India's diverse need for water. The adverse impact of climate change transcends geographical boundaries, and as such, any climate-induced on water-induced disaster in border areas of India prone to cause damage to the geographic continuous area of the neighboring country and vice versa. The water and climate change induced disaster wreak havoc in terms of loss of human and cattle lives, damages to property, and loss of the livelihoods of the people. This eventually retards the pace of development and entails potentials of jeopardizing security of the nation as well. In fact, if we discuss about the development of the water issue, we have to think about all the nations in South Asia, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka and all. So the society actually from poverty to prosperity and from periphery to mainstream. And since the water is in between all the activities like the sustained development, like any other development like climate change, and how come we think that these things we discuss in a actually multilateral plethora, because India has bilateral river water sharing treaties with its neighbors, which provide framework for tackling conflicts over water resources that occur at an intra-country level. For this, we need a political maturity at this level. So, to strengthen the regional cooperation on water sharing, there are some few things. There is need for establishment of a regional water hub in which all the countries of Asia should be represented. The hub should be close synergy with the water-related nation, agency of each member country of the Asia, so that it can contribute to tackling water sharing issues with mutual consent and satisfaction. Such a move can also serve as catalyst for mitigating adverse impact of climate change disasters. The regional water hub would require active support, expertise of UN agencies, especially ESCAPE, and other international agencies as well, unstinted support from the South Asian countries. The regional water hub can facilitate implementation of such program like judicious implementation of anti-flood measures, development of entrepreneurship skill, and improvement of people livelihood more effectively through convergence, coordination, and cooperation with the national, international agencies and respective government. There is more need to have capacity building on both sides of demand and supply, and since there is also dire need for early warning system in South Asia to help respective government to benefit from weather forecasting with the help of early warning. There is no effective early warning in place in hilly areas of Himalayas. So with the help of early warning, weather data can be exchanged for the benefit of local farmers and others. Another thing is the inland water transport. Actually, there is time is constrained. So I just sum up in 1 minute actually. So trends emerging from different studies suggest that there are shared interests between different sets of stakeholders in the river basin areas, and these alignment can be fostered and used for build grassroots coalition around shared objectives. Actually, in India, even started the development should be on river basin. Actually, it can actually include maybe 2 or 3 countries as well, like the corridor initiated Bhutan, India, and Bangladesh, so that actually the better results come up in sharing the knowledge and to filling the gaps of the competitive, cooperative, and cooperative attitude of the all stakeholders, even the country, and more things can be come up. We strongly feel civil society organization can serve as important conduits for fostering dialogues and linkages grassroots issues to the negotiation process. In particularly, CSOs can work outside the confine of foreign policy, work across borders to engage with a range of stakeholders and support informal dialogue processes to support formal negotiations. The dialogue platform provides by transboundary CSOs collaboration can help with the way for more effective formal negotiation between states. So, community security should be addressed in a much actually broader platform. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Arvind Kumar. Now, may I have the pleasure of listening to Mr. Neddm Ahmed from Pakistan.
Thank you very much, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I will not talk about the statistics of the water that in South Asia that's already been available at the various websites. I will pose some critical questions in front of you for the deliberations. We all know that that South Asia is facing a scarcity of water in terms of its availability of internal fresh renewable water supplies. And in this context, from the political economy perspective, I will pose one simple question for the deliberation. That is water still a source of power accumulation? We all know that water is life and it's a public good, and that it means cannot be traded for profit. It's a fundamental human right, which is according to the Human Charter, access to the water, safe drinking water supply is a basic human right. And in this backdrop, I will pose my first questions. Do we understand and able to explore the diverse characteristics of water that impacted the social, political, economic, and environmental spheres of common man and women? And we all know that beside development, sustainability, common sharing traits, water has the most catastrophic impact, which is the conflict and war. I think we need to understand how the water can lead to how water can impact the various facets of life or individuals. In the absence of the serious deliberation on the water and its characteristics, water is increasingly treated as a tool of socio-economic development, quote unquote, undevelopment, and the political advantages. We are living in a much different world, the world was experienced by our parents and grandparents. As a result, the primitive mode of production and social reproduction are no more relevant. Global, regional, national, and local power configurations has also been altered. In this context, a fundamental question arises that can water be used as a hegemonic tool, especially in the case of South Asian region? We know that we don't have much of the different answers, but we can move forward beyond our existing knowledge of power configuration in the South Asian region. Ladies and gentlemen, my third question is a very straightforward question, which is based on our own understanding as are we ready to recognize and rectify the internal imbalances on social, economic and political fronts, both at national and local level. What does it mean? It means that we haven't done good in terms of housekeeping. We have pathetic infrastructure. We don't have any governance institutions. We are lagging behind in education and health facilities, road infrastructure, and this situation is really critical in terms of the rural areas of all South Asian region. And multiplying effect is on the climate change impact, which is really pushing the people, vulnerable people, into abject poverty. So we have to think about that the internal imbalances are really impacted the political economy of water. I don't want to repeat what you already know, that this almost in South Asian country, there are crises of different kinds. Poverty, food insecurity, internal conflicts, social discontent, etc., etc. Why that's been the case? This is because the power configuration has not changed that could foster social and economic development in the region. My last question, and it's pretty straightforward. Is there any possibility that we could isolate South Asian region from the current adverse international political economy impacts, such as global financial crisis, trade crisis? We all know that WTO is in lull for quite some time, and most importantly, international development agency. I think to complement our development goals, we need indigenous solutions of our problem. And if we could able to solve our problems on all models, that would benefit for the people of the entire region. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Nadine. I think now we move to Mr. Herath
Right.
from Sri Lanka.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. Though we don't have borders to share, transboundary issues are not in Sri Lanka, but I think the solution to transboundary issues, to my mind, within the country we can find, if we keep the housekeeping better. Why I'm saying this, I've been working in Central Asia, I've been working in India, I have confronted these transboundary issues, and it's very difficult to tackle them. It's personal egos, political agendas, override the hegemonies, and the big economies try to dominate the scene, downlooking the poorest countries or the isolated countries in that. So my suggestion or my approach, what we did in Central Asia, for instance, trying to tackle the smaller rivers rather than big rivers, coming into tributaries which are coming in, and the neighboring countries, the communities are related and linked culturally and language-wise, they can understand each other. If you build that momentum, then you can take over the big ones, big hegemonies. We tried this approach in 5 river basins, 5 minor rivers in Central Asia, and they have been now replicated by GIS and other people, SDC in Central Asia. But coming back to my topic on the internal or the housekeeping, what I see is today in the water management we are confronted with 3 problems, all related to climate, food, and other things. That's excess water, that's floods, scarcity of water, that is drought, and water quality, which is less talked in this forum for some reason. So those 3 issues, unless we tackle, our approach to poverty alleviation, economic growth will not be successful. For that, we can't deal alone with water. We need to look at the whole nexus. That's water, food, energy, and environment. They are all interlinked. You can't balance one or the other. So we need to think all this together. Then if you're going through that, look at the largest user. In the South Asian region, largest user is irrigation or agriculture. It's almost 85–90% water in each country being used for agriculture purpose. But irrigation is stagnant. It's not moving ahead. Age-old flood irrigation still being practiced. No new technology is coming in. So we need to revitalize this irrigation. There are good examples taking place in China, Malaysia, that we can learn from our neighbors in the South Asia and move ahead. So irrigation revitalization is very important. But again, irrigation alone cannot do that. We know, we heard in the morning the fluctuations of rainfall, river flows. So how do we manage the fluctuations? That means we need to store water. Storage is the game to play now in the adaptation. Because adaptation is all about water. Mitigation, if you talk about mitigation, it's about carbon. Adaptation is about water. So we need to do more storage, either food or water. When it comes to water storage, there's a spectrum of things we can do. Not only large reservoirs. There are countries where you can't have large reservoirs. From large reservoirs, smaller, medium reservoirs, smaller tanks, and so forth, we can go up to the groundwater recharge, soil moisture, wetlands. So there are a spectrum of reservoirs, storages we can make use of them. Third part is governance and institutions. We need to look at holistically as a river basin. So even the transboundary, if we can look at the whole river basin and bring together all the players and build these institutions, we can do that. There, again, I'm saying we need to go back to the basics A, B, C, D of. It's metaphorically A, B, C, D, and literally A, B, C, D. A means assessment. We need to know the resource assessment. Data sharing becomes a big issue. In the region, we don't have that practice or culture of sharing data. That's a big issue, so assessment has to come in. Second, B is bargaining. All the stakeholders have to bargain what their stakes are, share this. C, we need to have a codification has to be done. All this bargain agreement has to be codified. D, the delegation has to come. Then comes the engineering E. Then, of course, the financing. So the A, B, C, D, E, F has to be practiced, then we can solve many of these issues. Thank you.
Thank you. The next panel we have is Azharul Haq from Bangladesh.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I think I'm a very lucky person because I born and grew up early years in the GBM, Ganges, Brahmaputra, Meghna basin. I went to college in the Indus Basin. I went for my higher studies in the Colorado Basin, and I worked for 2 years in the Nile Basin. So I'm very lucky that I've gone through all these phases, and it has taught me quite a number of lessons. Water is a public good, as has been very clearly identified, but of late it has become an extremely political good. Because water is the principal driver of the economy of South Asia, and especially to Bangladesh, it's our lifeline. Water almost dictates everything, from religion to culture to agriculture to economy to politics. Anything you talk about it, water touches from the root of the issues. So water is a very, very potent political commodity now. As the shortage will further increase, it will even be more politicized. Again, in our case, where we share 57 rivers, transboundary rivers, 54 with India and three with Myanmar, and during the last 50 years, we just had one treaty signed on Ganges with India, but it is also going through a very bumpy ride. And the water has become so politicized. You see, there was another treaty on Tista was ready to be signed, But the central government of India was vetoed by a state government of India, and that treaty could not be signed. So see how potent is the political weapon that a state government can veto the central government decision on water sharing. So this is that kind of political. Again, Sri Lanka, he is saying that they don't have transboundary issues, but water politics is not only transboundary now. It starts at the nano level, even below the micro level. From house to house conflicts on water is emerging now. From head end to tail end, in the same irrigation system, there are conflicts and there are political negotiations within the system on water distribution and water sharing. So in India, state versus state, they are going to the High Court to exert their right on water, because water in India is a state subject. Then internationally, you see now, we have, in our water basin, Nepal, India, Bhutan, Bangladesh, now China is becoming a big player. So when China has come in, things are going to get even worse and even more political. But there are, of course, silver lining on the cloud. The Indus Treaty was the first politically negotiated treaty, but there was an arbitrator. World Bank was arbitrating the treaty, and it has survived 2 major wars. So this kind of treaty that can survive wars, I think that is the kind of treaty we should look forward to. And though uneasiness is there, of course there will be uneasiness. Uneasiness is in the family, uneasiness is in the neighborhood, so uneasiness will be always be there. So we have to strive, and as it has it is water is now politics. So you have to be very careful and very effective negotiator to claim your share of water. But again, there are areas where all of us together can make improvement. Agriculture accounts for 80% of all water used in the subcontinent. Okay. So but our grains, we are only 1/3 efficient of a Chinese farmer. So if we can become half efficient of a Chinese or a Korean farmer, we save half of the water from agriculture. And that is going to give us some breathing space. And another fundamental mistake that we are making, we are not leaving the basic water for the river to live. We are killing the rivers. So we must ensure that the rivers should live, and we must provide the basic requirement for the rivers. Again, the political dimension, I'll deal mostly with the political dimension. The political dimension of the water is that we have a track 1 negotiation, government to governments. Then we have a track 2 negotiations. The CBOs, NGOs, they are making the track 2. Now we have a 2.5 negotiation. Then we have to go for a track 3 negotiation, farmer to farmer negotiation. So all are politically, the foundation is based on politics. Then there are other good examples. We are now, India is for the last 5 years are sharing the real-time flood data with us. So that has given us breathing space, and a lot of life and property is being saved. So we want more cooperation from India, because we are the lowermost riparian country, so we need a lot of help. So finally, a lot of people say that Third World War will be fought on water. So we need very constructive political negotiations to save humanity from this kind of disaster, because water security provides food security, it will provide environmental security, it provides ecological security, it provides security to livelihood, it provides this is an umbrella security to whole mankind. And we must strive politically, socially, from the economic point of view, from culture, from all avenues, to address the water issues for very basic survival of the humanity. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you brought out the political dimensions to the issue that we are deliberating. Now the next panel member is Mr. Uttam Kumar Sinha, India.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Sinha, but I am happy to be referred to as Sinha in Colombo, so not to worry on that count. water always trickles down, so I'll just pick up some of the thoughts that have trickled down in this session and articulate a certain position in a South Asian context. I heard the word hegemonic from one of my speakers. I heard the word basin management, which is an important feature anyway. The most peculiar and a most common dimension of water in South Asia is quite clearly the political issue. And therefore, clearly, water in South Asia is not only political, it's divisive, and it's very emotive. So these three quite clearly govern water relations between states. Now, water is what we make of it. If the orientation is possessiveness and protectiveness, then obviously the end path would be confrontationist and conflictual. If, of course, the orientation is about sharing the benefits, then the whole ambits open up to a lot of cooperative mechanisms. That's the way we look at water in South Asia. Contrary to what happens politically in South Asia, I think the states have shown a lot of maturity in forming treaties, water treaties, which are good case examples all over the world. The Indus water, as said, is a perfect example of how two very different countries who think very differently have still managed to forge a treaty in 1960, which still lives on. And there are mechanisms in that treaty which we have to pick up and evolve for our future references. The Ganges Treaty again is a classic case of how two differing countries come together on sharing the water issues. So I think South Asia has a lot of maturity in formulating treaties, which is a positive angle to what in this region is far more mixed with animosity. The second angle of the water issue is that the flow of water is going to constantly change. So the treaties in the future might need a little re-evaluation. The treaties are not fixed. For example, the 1960 treaty will have to be re-evaluated in certain contexts. Now, whether you call it the Indus Water II or a re-modified treaty in itself, but the idea is because the flow are going to change in the rivers, and it could be an increase in flow in the next 20 years, or then a reduction of flow in the next 30 years, the treaty needs to be modified accordingly. Now, some of the dispute resolution mechanisms within the treaties have to be further explored, and some of the good case examples have been picked up. Now, the Indus Water Treaty has, of course, the third-party mediation, which is a very effective dispute resolution mechanism, and it has worked quite effectively. Surprisingly, one would see the Indus Water, a lot of people talk about Indus Water Treaty as kind of going to the coffin. But if you look at the mechanism within the dispute resolution, you'd find the Indus Permanent Water Commission, which is a very important setup within the treaty itself, which allows a lot of dialogue and meetings to take place, even if the larger political atmosphere is not correct. So that kind of mechanism is also something important to explore. South Asia also now needs to move towards a more ecological enterprise kind of thinking, where it requires a larger representation of the epistemic community, the scientists, the climatologists, the meteorologists, the seismologists. I mean, there has to be a community, the epistemic community thinking. And I would say the Himalayan watershed is a good way of looking at South Asia from a scientific perspective. Call it a scientific enterprise, where you bring in new set of knowledge, new understanding, new mechanism in dealing with a future that might be very uncertain. And I think this is where the states need to really focus on. New satellites, new monitoring systems, checking the flows of the rivers. And when we talk about sharing information of river flows, it also requires a body of work that correctly passes on the right information sharing. The third element of the South Asia way of looking at water system is, and I'm calling South Asia as a hydrological unit now, given the fact that there's going to be a huge dependency on the rivers and the link of the rivers to food and energy, is the involvement of China in itself. Now, no longer South Asia would just remain a political unit within SAARC, but I think China and its involvement from a hydrological perspective will open up a new front in this region, a front of new water dialogue, a front of drawing China into the mechanism of water sharing within the region, turning around the upper and lower riparian context in the region. And these are new dynamics and new fronts which are challenging, but I think this will bring in, I think, a more collective voice within the South Asian region. The fourth and an important dimension is the Indian way of thinking in the region. I think for long India has been viewed as an upper riparian with Pakistan, upper riparian with Bangladesh. But it's time really to think about India as a middle riparian. Middle riparian that has concerns with an upper riparian called China, which has also a certain protectiveness about its lower riparian countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan. So the formulation of India as a middle riparian is an important role in looking at South Asia in a hydrological way and drawing in China to a greater water dialogue, which not only involves India but Bangladesh and many other countries as well. And then looking at South Asia as a scientific enterprise, the protection of the Himalayan watershed, collecting more information, building your scientific base, involving more technology into monitoring the system. I think these are some of the way forward that states in South Asia must awaken to. Thank you.
Chairman, now we are discussing this topic in a regional context. Of course, I came late, so the point I'm going to raise, whether it was already discussed, I do not know. The discussion has so far been confined to the river water and of upstreams of the rivers, etc. I would like to raise an issue in regard to ocean waters. Now, the Indo-Sri Lanka, the common ocean that we share is called the Pork Strait. Now, in this Pork Strait, there have been a number of disputes between the two countries. The first one in recent times was the Setu Samudaram project, where India was planning to dig the sea area between India and Sri Lanka so that larger ships from Mumbai could travel to Calcutta through that Pork Strait rather than going around Sri Lanka. Now, there was a lot of protest against this idea, both in Sri Lanka and India, and due to a Supreme Court case that was filed in India, this Setu Samudaram project came to an end. But had it gone through, Sri Lanka would not have had a say, and it is almost equivalent to what Farooq Sahab mentioned. To which court do you go? I mean, to the Indian court or the Sri Lankan court, right? And it was an Indian initiative. Number two, soon after the war ended in Sri Lanka, the fishing in the Pork Strait increased. When the war was going on, fishing in the Pork Strait was prohibited for nearly 30 years. Now the fishing has started. Now a dispute has started between the two countries. What is the ocean border between India and Sri Lanka? There have been cases of lot of Tamil Nadu fishermen crossing the border and coming to the Sri Lankan waters. There has also been lot of Sri Lankan fishermen crossing the border and going to the Indian area of fishing. Number of fishermen are prisoners, Sri Lankan fishermen are prisoners in Tamil Nadu. Number of Indian fishermen are prisoners in Sri Lanka due to violating this border. There is no joint naval exercise as such. There are Sri Lankan Navy in the Sri Lankan side. There are some Indian naval forces, but you know, you can have a big navy there, but fishing takes place in night hours, odd hours, when the naval boats are not there. So issues like this, how do we solve? How do we solve?
Good.
Thank you.
Well, I came a little late, but this is a very important subject that everybody's attention has been drawn. In the case of the rivers that has been flowing from the north to south, I mean, it's just the change of the name, you know. The same river is flowing in one country, the name is there something, and other country another, but it's the same water that is flowing down. And as my friend also talked about a little bit about China, in the shark chamber, the Chinese have been put as an observer, so they have been pretty active, and they have been inviting the business community. So we can see their interest in the South Asia as the growing economy. Nepal, as I was talking in the morning session, the potential of generating hydropower. So we have immense potential, and we have been seeing a lot of investors coming from India and other parts of South Asia and other parts of the world. But the irony is Nepal cannot invest. It's a very capital intensive project. So we as a country, we have been organizing a lot of programs, especially focusing to the generation of electricity by hydropower, which is a clean energy. My question to the panelists and to the chair is, how could that be addressed? Is Nepal in a position to allow the investment coming in a big way so that the multi-million dollars projects are there for hydropower, and the generation that is done out of that project could be shared not only to our neighboring country like India, but because of the border, I think Bangladesh and Pakistan is another power-hungry country. So we are talking about the SAES transmission grid, and that is really not working to the level that we as a private sector are expecting. So suppose if the country like India doesn't want our power, can we have that option of selling to the other countries, be it Bangladesh or Pakistan, or vice versa, whichever way? So I think this is be one approach where the projects can come up, not depending on one neighbor, but also, finding ways to see the other options of selling that type of generation, which is ultimately going to enhance the economy of the whole region. Thank you.
Would anyone of the panelists would like to respond to a particular question? I would give the floor, but after Babar Ali Saab makes it.
On the last speaker's point, I mean, not being a Nepalese and not being an engineer, the first thought that comes to my mind is that Nepal should look at their potential of hydroelectric generation like the Arabs look at oil. Bring in foreign exploiters who would come there for a benefit, and let Nepal be a shareholder, by providing this, say that 50% of the benefit would accrue to Nepal without any investment, and giving them the right to generate. And then they should enter into an agreement with India and Bangladesh or whoever are the neighboring countries to enable this generated power to be transmitted to whoever the user is, wherever they want to take it. They should allow transmission of power as they allow aeroplanes to fly over their countries. They should allow power to be transmitted if they don't want to use it themselves. I mean, it's not an impractical thing, provided everybody wants to solve it. If you want to stop it, then of course you can find a million reasons. Thank you.
Any member of the panel? Lama? Why not quickly sort of we take up, starting from Mahendra Lama?
Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to take up this Dr. Kathuria's question about how do you even incrementally build CBM. It's a very critical question. Ultimately, it comes to building confidence among the stakeholders that would really do. And I think one of the ways to build CBM would be to really do electricity exchange among the countries. And we have a very critical role. The CPD, the EEI, IIDS, JNU, IPS all came together in the last 10, 15 years, CASAC, right? And we all produced reports after reports to say that this electricity exchange is so very vital for the South Asian region. Initially, government said no, particularly government of India, as I used to tell, the Joint Secretary used to tell me, oh, don't touch the chicken neck because that is very, very vital for our security reasons. Now, if you see last 1 year, 2 years, you will find a significant change. The 3 projects which we are doing now with Bangladesh, including 500 megawatt sending to Bangladesh, 250, it can access from anywhere. It could be Bhutanese power, it could be Maharashtrian power, right? So this shows that there's a change, and this is going to bring about. The moment it happened, you see how it is cascading effect on Pakistan. It's asking for 500. Nepal asking for 200. I think this is the way forward, and people would like to have it. So I think this is how we build, and we have a very critical. We should not lose our faith in our own research, track 2, track 3 diplomacy, and it really pays. The second question is, answer would like to say is, we have to engage China now. Because if you see what is happening in China, if you see how they are trying to, the latest plan, the 12th plan, water resource management, if you see it's a gigantic plan of engaging the neighboring countries, right? And we do not discuss about it at all. Right? And when it does it, then we make hue and cry about what it has already done, right? So I think it's better to engage China at the moment, and let's see in what way China could really play a critical role in really helping or in really coordinating with other South Asian countries in the management of water resources. The third quick point is, you know, we are talking about India and Bangladesh water sharing of Tista. And I'm talking about Bengal not getting water from Tista, because Sikkim has now almost 20 plus hydel power projects and huge diversions, right? And it may be the case that Bengal would not get. So this morning when I was talking about conflicts on water resources, it is a very local, it is a national, and it is an international conflict. And this is quite visible. Some of us who have been working in the mountain areas, some of us who have been working in academic institutions, we could see that this will happen. Yet we would not like to discuss this. Why? This is a question I raised this morning. Let's discuss this, because we can foresee these conflicts emerging very fast in case of water resources within the country, outside the country, and of course as a local issue also. Yet we are avoiding the issue, and this is what we should not do. And I think we should be discussing this. And last point, sir, quickly about the water, the electricity. One of the major demands of Bhutan is it would like to come out of the monopsony situations where India is the only buyer of its electricity, right? And India has now a plan that it will develop 10,000 megawatt on top of the present about 1,300 plus 10,000, right? And if Bhutan, and if you see India-Bangladesh agreement, if you see what is going to be between India and Pakistan, one of the major options is to produce electricity, and India would give a transmission willing facility and transport across, and this is going to happen. This is going to happen, and I think we should celebrate this precisely because this is going to bring a substantive regional integration in South Asia, and Bhutan would really like to have it. Nepal would like to. So far, we did not really debate on this. The feasibility was not discussed. Now the feasibility studies are there. Concrete technological interventions are there because India has a nationwide high voltage grid, right? And this can be used to transmit or to have interconnections. Thank you. Sorry.
Any?
I would like to respond one of the issues raised by one of our Dr. Anis, that the water is not a public good. This is something which is being discussed in international literature, that the water is commodification of the global commons, and water is increasingly pushed towards the marketability of the water resources. So there are two ways of looking at the water, and this is exactly what I am trying to say, that if we understand the various characteristics of water, unless until we will not resolve our core issues like development, sustainability, and poverty reduction. And if we are increasingly try to commodify water and trade it for the profit, that will lead to our conflicts and wars. That's my first point. The second point is that for the confidence building measures, I would like to see a salt water commission established in to resolve the water, to see what's the possibility of the cooperation within the SAARC countries, and I think that it will help us to resolve the issues of peripheral issues as well as the core issues.
Yeah. Okay. I'll touch on 2-3 points. The first, I want to tell you something that is becoming a strategic commodity. Like what is the petroleum product today, water will be something like this 150 years from now. The signs are very clear. For the first time in the literature, I have found some data from the CIA on water, agriculture, and GDP. Never found this before. So I thought CIA did intelligence work. Now they are doing some intelligent work in terms of water and agriculture. So I want to mention that it's becoming increasingly becoming a strategic commodity. And second, there are new players that are disturbing the water security. One is the arsenic, presence of arsenic. Arsenic started from the West Bengal plains, then it came to Bangladesh. Now it has moved to Tarai in Nepal and lower Indus Valley in Pakistan. It has gone to South America. So it's now traveling all over the world. So this has opened up a whole new dimension in terms of ensuring water security for drinking, for agriculture, and food security and drinking water security. So these are the new emerging scenarios. And I want to share some scientific some scientific generation information has been generated on climate change impact on water. One is, in the short run, a lot of people are going to say, in the short run, our water in the Brahmaputra river is going to increase. Do you know why? Because the Himalayan glaciers are melting. So then, when they have stopped melting, then there will be a very acute short. So initially there will be a honeymoon period, and then the actual crunch will come later. So this is one, and another. Those are very preliminary results, but it is increasingly been confirmed that due to sea level rise, there will be close to 1 meter height increase of the sea in the Bay of Bengal. That will take away 10 to 15% of our land and population. So day before yesterday, I was speaking in Stockholm. So I said that because we will be drowned, so I'm looking for places to send our people. So you have extra spaces, so you can tell me now, sir. So we'll book it in advance to send our people. So with those two, and I think the most encouraging thing that is happening in the subcontinent is the power trading. Now we'll be getting 250 megawatts from the Indian grid in late this year, and another 250 later. So this has started. So it's a very good beginning. And as water is a contentious issue, there are other softer areas where we can work together, like the data sharing. We are sharing some data. Then the increasing water productivity. The agriculture is being accused and rightly so, to be the most inefficient user of water. And that luxury cannot continue. So if you look at the productivity of the research institute, for the same amount of water, the research institute in the same country produces 3 times as much grain as the farmer's field. So reduce that gap. So here we can make a joint effort. Softer issues where nobody is going to be hurt in any way in resource accessing. So another thing is the silt management. 1 to 2 billion tons of silt comes to Bangladesh every year with the water, and this is choking all our rivers. So this is another area where we need cooperation, regional cooperation from the upper riparian, which is how to manage our silt, and also guided, introduce guided deposit where we can reclaim land from the sea, and which we are already doing. So that can be accelerated. So there are a lot of softer issues, non-contentious, that we can. So that will give build confidence. So confidence building measures are prerequisite for addressing the other important and contentious issues. So I think I'll stop here then.
Yeah. Water is taking as a development goal and economic good, actually. And we think we should think beyond the political boundaries. Even on all these questions, actually, the suggestion is that we have to set up a institute like Regional Water Hub. And if you know about, in India, the water comes in Central Ministry, 11 or 12 ministries looking the water. This is the main problem. and water is a state subject. That's why there is a flow in while we are treating water treaties with Bangladesh and Nepal and others actually. So India Water Foundation tried to set up a India Water Hub so that Ministry of Water Resource, who is responsible to all these treaties and all this development in that sector, should also come up with all other ministries and institutes, because water is actually in silos. Lot of agencies, lot of think tanks, lot of government working on the water sector. But we should come forward for a holistic solution. And if you want to actually discuss this matter, transboundary matter, we should think that the China is the most factor in that sense. India is actually middle riparian. So all the lower riparian countries from China should have a water treaty with China. And as some question is about the maritime security and other things, actually if we have a institution under which one roof we can discuss all the economics of water actually, either quality of water, either transboundary water or waterways, and other institutional can be framed so that most of the South Asian countries be benefited, because actually in that region India comes in a midway, and most of the countries have the boundaries with India. And in last 5 or 6 years, India Water Foundation actually pursue the government of India to have few other things should be in the negotiations, like the media, because media creating a lot of problems, either media of Pakistan, India or Bangladesh or anything. So come up with an open mind actually. And if these all talks are closed doors, as somebody talked about, when we talking about the Bangladesh, Nepal or Sikkim, Nepal or any country, so the people are not a part of it in fact, and most of the treaties are bilateral. So multilateral treaties should be required. Actually, there is need of a framework of law, so that these people are these countries are bound. Always the lower riparian countries are actually abusing India. So they are actually tampering with their river water, or actually silt is coming up. Even if you come up with the new things, like actually the groundwater is not discussed much in the session. Another problem which creating a lot of problem in transboundary water is groundwater, because a lot of pollution, geogenic problems are also actually going to the lower riparian. So in fact, in that forum, we should actually confidence building measures in cross border areas to improve livelihood and affective areas. In fact, India Water Foundation is a knowledge partner to Meghalaya government, river basin. We initiated some good thing, if you have some time. We initiated a corridor, this is India and Bangladesh and Bhutan. So unless earlier the things are actually governed by the state wise, but now government of India realizes, in fact the Meghalaya government, so that the most of the people, the kind of situations is the same for the river basin. In India 30 kind of river basin. So some river basin are transboundary. If we initiate good things for one river basin, it can be translated into action and result orientation. In fact, in track 3 diplomacy, government of Meghalaya is initiating border things with Bangladesh government as well. When in weekends, the both side of the farmers can exchange their commodities. So this is the beginning. So we come up with the open mind actually. If you want to initiate any good thing actually, don't talk about all the things are actually coming last I think 5 or 6 years. We should initiate and we should have come up with setting of an institution like regional water house, so that you can address the calamities, the data sharing, the prospective things can be addressed in one room. Thank you.
Well, some quick points to react to. You cannot take politics away from water. I mean, the whole idea is to talk in very altruistic militaristic manner about water, I think we should not do that. Politics is very much ingrained in water. What we need is a political awareness how to deal with water. And one of the best way not to deal with water is not to talk about the scarcity of water. I mean, there's more about the mismanagement of water that happens in the region than there is actual scarcity. So I think we'll have to have a proper lens on what the water issue is all about. That's the first point I would like to make. The second point is, I think South Asia, like many river basins elsewhere in the world, is in midst of intensive debate on how to look at the river system. There is a huge engineering perspective in the way you look at the river system, especially if you look at the 15 to 20 years time span in which there will be an excessive flow of water. So we're looking in terms of storage capacity here, and South Asia has probably the worst storage capacity anywhere in the world. So there is this engineering perspective which clashes automatically with the civil society perspective and with the more local perspective of things. And then there's this whole new debate about maintaining the ecological flow, maintaining the environmental flow. So South Asia is in the midst of some intense debate, and we do not know which way and which direction these opinions will take shape into. The third point is on the CBM, and particularly with China. I think one great CBM that can be done in South Asia is water is also a lot about misperception here. You know, a lot of the stories that go around in the local media is about the misperception of water. You know, that water is treated like a tap. You can switch it off and switch it on, and the country will run dry accordingly. So I think there needs to be a far greater traction, media traction in the region itself. And I think one exercise that India has learned to do, I think in the MEA, is to bring in a lot of media people, for example, from Bangladesh, from Nepal, from Pakistan, bring them over to India, make them go and see the sites, the inspection of sites itself. For example, the Dipaimukh. There's a lot of effort now to take the media to the sites, make them for themselves see what these constructions are. Also make them aware that the same concerns are raised within the country itself. You know, just not the concerns of the Bangladeshis, which is exclusive, but the concerns are within the countries itself. Let's not forget, concerns with trans-boundary issues are also similar concerns in the provincial states within the country itself. So that's the second point. The third point. The fourth point, I would fully agree that it's time really to look at the river basin in South Asia from a sustainable development goals. I think these needs to be merged into a larger thinking which you raised. I think the Millennium Development Goals probably is a more Western-oriented concept. I think we should move more towards sustainable development goals, and I think that's one of the new features of the Rio +20 is to think about sustainable development goals in which water resource features quite prominently into the structures of these goals. On your question, sir, on the India and Bangladesh, why they did not have a third-party arbitration, I think it only speaks volume of the good diplomacy that happened. I think there was tremendous trust in hydro diplomacy. Probably, I think, one of the two countries which really used effective hydro diplomacy and trust-building exercise was India and Bangladesh. They didn't require the third-party push which happened in the Indus Water Treaty to make it work. I think there was this great level of understanding which still exists between India and Bangladesh, but to build trust through a bilateral approach rather than have a third-party intervention. On China, I think China is going to clearly change the dynamics in the region, and I think for a better way. I think clearly China is a hydrological part of the South Asia water system. And I think it cannot come simply through an India approach to China. It has to come through a more collective lower riparian approach. Probably that will transcend just not South Asia, but probably Southeast Asia as well. So there needs to be a down riparian voice that needs to emerge, that brings in the concerns of an upper riparian and draws them into a dialogue here. Not in a very conflictual way, but in a more awareness kind of understanding. And remember, China has not had great experience in water treaties. It's time for China to be a responsible country. They have to be also a responsible upper riparian state.
Last.
Yeah, thank you. Last. Well, I endorse most of the things said by the panelists and the participants here. I think we need to talk more about the achievements and benefits by sharing rather than talking about the ills, so that we can convince the politicians, policymakers, and the communities. So better to be shared or work together rather than crying on their own feet. For that, of course, we need to build better leaderships, far-sighted leaderships, and we need to adopt more adaptive management strategies so that we can move with the time, we can live with it. Because we have a history, we have a heritage, which no other region has. So we have to build upon our history. As great Leonardo da Vinci said, if there's a water problem, look at the history, not at the problem. So there's a way to go. Again, I want to close my few words from Mahatma Gandhi. There's enough for everyone, but not to meet the greed, but the needs.
Very
Thank
good
you.
one. Thank you. Well, thank you all the panelists, and thank you.
Thank you, Chair.